Okay, getting into chapter 4 of the Medium's book, compiled by Allan Kardec, Spirits of Light and the Mediums he worked with. It's called Theories, and it's more about what the naysayers have to say, and when you do research, sometimes it's a process of ruling things out. So, in the beginning, he opens the book saying that each observer interprets phenomenon in their own way, according to their own ideas, beliefs, or prejudice. Hence, there have arisen several different theories, and they're going to compare them to look at the value of them. And adversaries of Spiritism say that the Spiritists themselves are at variance, or basically can't agree with each other. But this is a poor argument because every new science, there's uncertainty, and it just takes time and work on it. And also, if you look at Christianity, not every sect agrees with each other. And this is also an argument that is often brought up against, you could say, neo-paganism, because it's so eclectic, or as an excuse just to do it yourself when people look at even voodoo lineages, because they do differ from each other. But the fact is that there should be a basis behind these beliefs, or why these certain choices were made to explain a phenomenon over time that these cultures are working with, and they're not just personally selected out of preferences. So, chapter 3 was more about classes of believers and unbelievers. So, these are arguments against Spiritism that he's kind of debunked. So, theory of charlatanism, and in the last chapter, Spiritists don't disagree that some people are scammers, no matter what profession or area that you look at. And that mediums aren't conjurers, and that character of the medium does matter in Spiritism. We do say that no spirit manifestations have ever been imitated by charlatans, for abuses exist everywhere, but the abuse of a thing is no argument against the thing itself. Theory of weak-mindedness. Some of our opponents put aside all suspicion of trickery, but assert that the mediums are deceived themselves, which is a more civil way of saying that mediums are simple-minded or simpletons, or that those who believe in Spiritism are crazy or mad, thus giving themselves the exclusive position of mental soundness. This charge of insanity is a grand argument of those who can find no good reason for their opposition. But the frequency of this charge has made it so ridiculous that we need not waste our time in refuting it, and we care but little for attacks of our adversaries. We take our lot bravely, consoling ourselves with the knowledge that plenty of people of considerable merit are our companions, and that most Spiritists are of the enlightened classes, of the immense majority of its adherents. There are a few eccentric ones, but the exceptions are no more against Spiritism than any religious madness or group. More than any other person has lost their wits in the study of mathematics. And that all areas have their fanatics. And then you can't confound exaggeration of a thing, or obsession of a thing with a thing itself. Theory of hallucination. I guess that's related to mental illness, but it bears on its surface a color of scientific discrimination, which attributes the spirit phenomenon to an illusion of the senses. they say the observer may be a very respectable person, but he thinks he sees what he does not see, which is kind of fits into the self-delusion category. When he sees a table rise up and float in the air with nothing to rest upon, the table is not really moving at all. He just thinks he sees the table move by some kind of mirage or refraction or optical illusion, such as we may see a star or an object out in the water out of its true position. But witnesses of the phenomenon are able to prove their objective nature by walking under the table, or proving that these things are not held up by strings or mechanisms, etc. It oftentimes that when the table gets broken when it falls to the floor, so how can the table be broken be an effect of an optical illusion? A physiological cause could make one person have vertigo, etc. But when several people are witnessing to the same thing, can it be alleged that everybody is a victim of illusions or a group hallucination? Theory of the cracking muscle. So the Fox sisters in New York, they had spiritualism going on, and the knocking spirits, the rapping on the wall. Several times the Fox sisters recanted their story of talking to the spirits, and then several times they say that no, they really didn't make it up, but at one point they claimed that they were, I guess, making their toe move and crack or pop, and that was really the knocking sound, apparently. But that requires a very loud sound, I guess, and very good hearing. So observation has proven that these occurrences are not due to a physical cause. It is true that a learned surgeon has declared that the spirit rap is produced by voluntary or involuntary contractions of the short tendon of the muscle of the instep in the foot. Apparently, he went into elaborate anatomical details to show how this is done like the beating of a drum, and even reproduced the rhythm of well-known songs, for which he deduced his conclusion that people who believe that they hear knocks on a table are dupes, either by a mystification or a delusion. But I mean, I myself have heard knocks, etc., in the walls, etc., and I can say it's not cracking of my toe. And that playing music, or the ability to do this with your toe is actually an extremely rare ability for a person to do this, but that obtaining knocks on a table or a wall is actually more common, and that those who hear it do not normally possess the toe ability, I guess you could say. And apparently you need to move your leg to be able to do this toe crack, and the mediums have been observed not moving when the table knocks have been produced. And the knocks are perceptible difference to the ear, that some are on the table, some are on the furniture, some are on the walls, some are on the ceiling, and there's difference between the knocking, so that can't be reproduced with a toe. And so that all the facts of the case, again, have not been examined, and that scientific men are in a hurry to dispute, to disregard that which they do not understand and all the facts of the case. Because they struggle with the known and the unknown, just even to possibly admit that it's not known. Theory of physical causes. So there's two different types of spirit phenomenon, I guess we could say. One is physical causes that are more difficult for scientists to refute or to debunk, and then there are intelligent or intellectual effects on a person, and that's harder to prove, I guess you could say, or easier to debunk because it seems more subjective. So they apply physical, say a spirit throws something like across the room. This is a physical action or a physical cause, and so they attribute this to magnetism, to some sort of use of electricity or energy, or some sort of fluidic action, rather than the spirit actually just picking up the table and throwing it. More that they're actually acting on energy. It's not a purely mechanical effect. And they measure this, that the power, the physical power of the spirit can increase in proportion to the number of people attending the seances, so that each person adds a human energy or element as to power an electric battery for the spirit. And also different people have different quality of energy that they can lend to spirit manifestations, such as mediums or certain people's energy body are just able to help the spirits come through. The knockings show, and physical movements show, signs of intelligence. The knockings respond to alphabets, to yeses and nos, to the questions put to the spirits in the reunions or seances. And so they show that these physical rapping and knocking responses are not just physical, they're due to a intelligent cause, because the spirit is actually communicating something. They're not just making noises. Theory of reflection. So looking at, there's proof of intelligence of the phenomenon or behind the phenomenon. And this theory is anti-materialistic, so we're not just looking at now just physical causes of things. And so Kardec's questioning, why is this not of interest to scientists? Would it not make them curious? Or be something, a very remarkable phenomenon, like a novel thing they would want to look into? There's been a phenomenon like people speaking a language that they're not known to them, someone who can write who's illiterate, responses to questions which are not within the medium's knowledge base or education or even mental capacity, and 1,000 other facts, lending no doubt as to independence of an intelligence which manifests itself. The presence of an outside intelligence is shown by their morals and by the nature of their answers given, by the truth of what they're given, if physically proved by automatic writing, or if the writing produced spontaneously without a pen or a pencil. This lends that it's impossible for someone to make this trick back in the day, back in the 1900s at least. That they didn't really have the ability to do that. So they're saying that this is a response to a spirit using energy to manifest something. And that's not responsible of a person's reflex to make writing appear on a piece of paper that you're not touching. Theory of the collective soul. According to this theory, the soul of the medium then identifies itself with several other living people, present or absent, and this union of people forms a collective whole, combining knowledge, aptitude, and intelligence together. So this is like collective consciousness nowadays, what we would say. It's an expression of an individual opinion, but only a few people believe this, who believe in mediumship, that it's just an expression of the collective consciousness and not a bunch of other spirits. Theory, and it's also incarnated people too, not collective consciousness in terms of spirits. Theory of, because they're trying to repudiate or, again, these are debunking claims. Theory of somnambulism, that the medium kind of goes into a trance and has multiple souls in themselves, or is then able to pull out information that in their waking life they have no knowledge of. It's impossible to deny that this occurs in some cases, but it would be necessary to see this happen in the majority of mediums to be convinced that this theory cannot explain all phenomenon, and such a state is probably the exception and not the rule. Because mediums do this without having the least amount of consciousness, sometimes of what they're writing, showing no emotion, sometimes paying no attention to what they're doing, often laughing and talking about any number of subjects, but producing these other effects. We can understand how a person can be in a trance, but we don't understand how a trance could make a person write when they don't know how to write and they're not literate, or give communication through knocking communications, or spontaneous writing on a piece of paper. It doesn't explain how a trance can do that. So then again, there's an intelligence independent of the medium. Pessimist theory. So this is more about Christians who say, oh, there's a bunch of demons and there's a bunch of devils doing this. Or it's just demons and angels, that there are no dead or whatever. It's kind of irrational, doesn't have a lot of credit. That if you believe in existence of the soul, then and you believe that you're talking to a family member, then how could they be a demon if you really are talking with a family member? Because family members don't become demons when they die necessarily. This is what Kardec's saying. So the gist of the question is, are only bad spirits able to communicate with us? To these people, they would say yes, but Kardecian spiritists beg to differ, and you need to answer the following questions. 1, are there good and evil spirits? 2, is God more powerful than bad spirits or demons, if this is your mode of expression? 3, if we affirm that bad spirits only can talk to us, that good spirits cannot, then this may be by the will of God or against the will of God. If it's against the will of God, it proves that bad spirits are more powerful than God. If it's God's will, why in his goodness does he not permit good spirits to counterbalance the influence of others, or only let bad spirits talk to us? 4, what proof do you have that good spirits are impotent or cannot talk to us? 5, in reference to the communication of the wisdom of the communication we receive, it's replied that the devil makes all sorts of trickery to deceive. We know by experience that there are hypocritical spirits whose language wears a false varnish of excellence. But do you admit that ignorance can counterfeit knowledge, or an evil nature counterfeit virtue? So it's saying, can an ignorant spirit, like a truly uneducated, dumb, ignorant spirit, can that feign knowledge? They're saying no, it cannot. Without letting out something that betrays the fraud, because they're going to be inconsistent because they don't have knowledge of everything. 6, if the devil alone has the power of communicating, and he is the enemy of God and men, how is it that spirits then tell us to pray to God. Spirits tell us to submit ourselves to God without murmuring about our sufferings, to practice charity, and to practice all the maxims of Christ. Those spirits are saying to be Christian. How can this not destroy the devil's empire? And this is kind of like, I guess, what they said about, Christ in the Bible too, who accused him of trafficking with demons or something. And he's saying, like, a house divided will fall. So why would the devil give such good counsels? Then apparently it would be particularly short-sighted for him to furnish arms against himself. 7. If the spirits communicate with us, it must be by the permission of God. And when we find that there are both bad and good communication or spirits, is it not reasonable to suppose that God permits the bad ones in order to test or try us or help us grow, and the other to help us grow or to counsel us for our good? 8. What would you think of a father who would leave his child at the mercy of only bad spirits and would not try to guide us or turn us from evil, or if there's not spirit guides that would help us? Do you believe that God would not do what no good father or no good man would do? 9. All religions recognize certain manifestations of saints, angels, etc.'s apparitions, visions, communications, etc., that are sanctified by their authority. Is this recognition contrary to the doctrine of exclusive communication of demons? We believe that people hold these convictions in all honesty, but we also think that others have upheld it in order to dissuade people from the study of Spiritism because of possible evil communications. They hoping to frighten people, like they would say to a child, "Don't touch the stove, it burns." The intention may be good, but eventually will be a failure, because the prohibition itself excites curiosity and does more harm when people enter it into trying to communicate with spirits in ignorance. And also will do harm to their religious views when they find out that that's actually not true. If a Muslim heard a spirit talk against the Quran, he would think it was a bad spirit, and the same with a Jew or the Torah or certain points of the law of Moses. And for the Catholics, we have heard one confirm that a spirit who communicated could only be the devil, even though the spirit had acclaimed Christian views, the Bible, charity, tolerance, love to their neighbor, etc., which are in accordance with the teaching of Christ. Spirits are nothing but the souls of men, and men being imperfect, it follows that there are spirits equally imperfect or evil, and their character may be reflected in the words. There are some who are evil, some who are hypocritical. This is an incontestable fact, and we should be on our guard, but we should not renounce society because there are wicked men in the world. God has given us reason and judgment in order that we may appreciate spirits as well as mankind. The best way to guard oneself against the annoyances that may result from the practice of Spiritism is not to ignore it, but to understand it. Imaginary danger does not frighten everyone, and such fear as soon as is gotten rid of, but the clear setting forth of reality is comprehensible by all. Optimist theory. While some see only demons in talking to spirits, some see only good spirits. They suppose that all souls are in their reality, then spirits will now see the truth of everything, and then thus therefore have all knowledge, possess all science, and all the greatest wisdom. Their greatest blind confidence in the superiority of beings of the visible world has been a source of deception to many people, who have learned at length and to costed them then to further distress certain spirits as well as certain people. The unspiritist the unispiritist or monospiritist theory is that there's only one spirit that talks to people, and that this spirit is Christ, But some communications are very trivial, others are very coarse, others are very malevolent, others are very wicked, and it would be profane to suppose that they all emanate from a spirit of goodness. If those who hold this belief have never had any bad communication, we could understand their illusion, but the majority of them acknowledge that they've received some very bad communications, which they explain by saying that the good spirit has wished to test them. But these opinions are so opposed to each other. Eventually there will be common sense and experience, because we say that people of this opinion could have only seen and observed very little. People who've seen spirit manifestations by vision or otherwise imply that these are always produced by the same spirit, whether it's the devil to some or Christ to others, and who is seen to assume all forms, but they do not tell us why other spirits cannot communicate, nor why the spirit of truth should deceive us by presenting themselves under false appearances, deceiving a poor mother by making her believe through a lie that she is talking to the child for who she grieves for. Reason is to believe that a holy and exalted spirit would not stoop to play such a comedy, but I say it's kind of like a tragedy. The multi-spiritist or poly-spiritist theory. One, spirit phenomenon are produced by intelligences that do not have a physical body. They have an energy body, that is to say, beings that are spirits. Two, spirits constitute the invisible world. They are everywhere. The infinity of space is peopled by them. They are always around us and are always in union with some of them. 3. Spirits act incessantly upon the physical world, upon the moral world, and are one of the powers of nature. 4. Spirits are not beings of a different order than we are ourselves. They are souls of those who have lived on the earth and other worlds and who have thrown off their body, where it follows that souls of men are spirits in flesh, and that we on dying become spirits. 5. Spirits are of every degree of goodness and badness, of knowledge and ignorance. 6. Spirits are submitted to the law of progress, and we will all arrive at perfection, but as we possess free will, we will arrive at our progress faster or slower according to the amount of effort and determination we have. 7. Spirits are unhappy or happy, and this is in proportion to how good or evil we are or we have done in our life and the amount of progress we have made. Perfect, happy spirits are those who arrived at the supreme degree of perfection. 8. All spirits under certain conditions can manifest themselves to men. The number of those who are able to communicate with us is unlimited. 9. Spirits communicate through the agency of mediums who serve them as instruments and interpreters. 10. The superiority or inferiority of spirits is shown by their language. The good only give good counsels and only say what is good. Everything about them attests to their elevation. Bad spirits deceive, and their statements usually bear the stamp of ignorance and imperfection. I'll also add here that a good spirit can give good counsel, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be something you don't want to hear. It doesn't mean it's not going to be something that hurts your feelings or your ego. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be strongly worded. It's not to mean that it's not going to embarrass you. It's kind of like, some of those Madama spirits who are moms that have had enough and they don't coddle. Or a little bit of tough love. That doesn't make them a bad spirit. A knowledge of the different degree of spirits is indispensable to understand the nature of spirits who manifest themselves with good or evil qualities. So, about discernment. So, theory of the material soul. That within regard to the nature of the soul and the perispirit are not two distinct things, or to speak more strictly, the perispirit is nothing more than its soul itself that distills itself. While the Spiritist doctrine regards the perispirit as only being an envelope, so we don't believe the first, we believe the last, that the energy body, the perispirit, is the personality or the ghost self, and that the soul goes through repeated reincarnations, unless you could fuse the two together because of your spiritual work when you're alive, or possibly through timely veneration by someone living. The perispirit is made of matter, but it's more of an energetic matter. It's not as dense as a physical matter, of a very ethereal nature. And the soul, according to a physical view, is more or less material, according to its degree of purity. But either way you view it, it doesn't change the doctrine of Spiritists, because it makes no change in the soul's destiny nor the conditions of its future happiness, or seed or fruit or whatever they want to see it as, a homogeneous or two separate parts, but interrelated. It goes into this in the Spirits book. The soul or an energy body is something, but they call it immaterial from this energy point of view, even though matter is energy, just condensed energy. What some call the perispirit is the same of what others call the soul's fluidic envelope. So you have this perispirit or envelope energy body, and then the soul would be within that, possibly. It is formed of a fluid which gives us the ability to sense them. Elevated spirits are different than inferior spirits. Their fluids are more earthly and more material. Therefore, they may complain of sufferings, of hunger, cold, etc., that the higher spirits cannot feel, because their more earthly fluids are purified, and their consciousness, and to say their soul. And so this is another reason we have veneration, and we do elevation for our spirits. And then that's also why they don't require more material offerings at some point. At least according to Espiritismo. The perispirit can vary and can change over time, but the soul does not change. It just kind of exists, I guess they say. And there's much confusion between soul, perispirit. The perispirit can be more erratic when it communicates with you, because that's what you're seeing, is the spirits visual, what they look like, that can be more fluidic, that can change. And they're saying the nature of the spirit, though, the true nature of it, or its soul, does not change, because our soul does change. That's why we reincarnate, etc., and don't have the same perispirit. But they're just saying when you're talking to a spirit. That was a little confusing there, so I sorted that out. Okay. Spiritism is for our moral improvement. A child does not know as much as a man does. The spirits have only given us enough information as necessary to prevent misuse of the information, they're saying. And that ends the first part of chapter 4.